Guys, so welcome to tonight's session. So this is going to be the last of the core classes, and then next week we will do the revision classes. I'll do the recording on the other two classes we missed last week due to load shedding. So I'll do the pre-recordings and I'll just upload it for you guys. You might just make sure that that you are actually practicing. And that you have a plan of the topic that you need to cover and the questions that you will be covering for each topic. So make sure you have a plan of actually working through various questions. Make sure you can also handle any question that comes your way. So don't rush through a question. So obviously you need to do it within time. You need to do it quickly, but initially first focus on making sure you get the understanding correct and that you understand the key issues that the topic is trying to resolve, and you understand the theory. You are able to identify where you're going wrong, why you're going wrong, and how to fix it. You want to be able to sit one side without looking at the question and run through your mind or talk to yourself the various issues that the topic is about. What are the key formulas or the key stuff that you need to calculate or do, and also what you have you want to talk to yourself or run through your mind the issues you got wrong and why you got it wrong and how you fixed it. You will never believe that process alone will significantly increase your understanding. So just running through questions is not necessarily going to help you completely. It's important to run through questions, but it is equally important to sit back and think about what you've actually learned, because in that way you will make the necessary, your brain will be able to make the necessary connections. You will be able to pick up similarities, you'll be able to pick up differences, and you'll be able to spot the various principles that are being tested. So make sure that the quality of your learning is important. It is high. Okay, so make sure you practice. Try to do 2 to 3 questions per topic, and then also make sure that you do 1 to 2 full exam from start to finish in one sitting. The first time you can take your time. The second time you need to try to do it within the limited time, within the 3 hours or something of that nature. Okay, so please make sure that you practice. Don't think that only this class is enough. This class is here to give you the understanding, to help you develop the thinking process so that you can handle other questions. But the way you're going to handle other questions is taking this thinking process, taking the high-level overview and applying it to other questions. And also take note, make sure that you that you have the opportunity to set up time with me for one-to-one to ask a specific question that you're not certain about when you work through a particular question. Okay, so please make sure that you do work through and study. Okay. So tonight is CVP. Okay, so this is cost, volume, profit. That's what CVP stands for. Now, CVP is basically a tool or a mechanism used to analyze costs. It is used to analyze volume, and it's used to analyze profit. Okay, so it is, if I can put it this way, the chances of CVP coming in is 100%. Because it's an important principles are being tested over here. This is something that management use all the time, because the top management is always analyzing costs, are always analyzing volume, are always analyzing profits. Because remember, in management accounting, when we're dealing with management accounting is dealing with operations. Okay, so management accounting, we have financial management and we have management accounting. In financial management, we largely focused on long-term investments. We largely focused on financing. So the investment decision, which is long-term investments and working capital. Financing decision, which is how you're going to fund projects, and the distribution decision, that is when you make profits, are you going to keep the profits and reinvest it into the business? Are you going to take all the profits and distribute it as a dividend? Or are you going to keep some and distribute some? Okay, so financial management deals with those three decisions: investment, financing, and distribution or distributing. Okay, management accounting deals with there are four decisions. So out of the four, three decisions financial management handles, and the one decision is what management accounting handles, and that is the operating decision. So the operating decision is about profits. Now remember, profit is equal to income less expenses. So profit equals income minus expenses. Now, if I want to talk it, if I want to explain it in terms of, so in management accounting, we are focused on the operating decision. Okay, the operating decision is all about profit. Okay, so it's about managing or making a profit. Now, what do we know? Profit equal income minus expenses. Okay, so profit equals income minus expenses. Now, to put this in terms of management accounting, profit equals income minus fixed costs minus, income minus variable cost minus fixed cost. Okay, so I want to just change this around: income minus total cost. So expenses, which is total cost. Okay, but remember, total cost is split between variable costs and fixed costs. Now we can break this down even further. Profit equals, I'm going to change the word income. I want to redo this quickly. So I'm going to just put this again there. So profit equal income minus expenses. Okay, so that's what we know it is. If you want to talk it from a management accounting point of view, we will say profit equals sales minus total cost. Now we can break down total cost into variable costs minus fixed costs. So we still have sales minus variable costs minus fixed costs. But from a management accounting point of view, we can break this down even further. Sales is equal to units times price. Okay. Variable costs as well can be broken down into units times costs. And then fixed cost remains fixed cost. So that is what we will do. So that is, so if you must look at it carefully. Just give me 1 second. I'll take my son out quickly. He decided now to wake up. Okay, so if you must look very carefully at management accounting, every topic ultimately is dealing with this issue, profits. Okay, and what you must take note, profit is sales minus cost. What you must take note, sales, total cost can be broken into variable and fixed. So it's sales minus variable minus fixed cost. But what you must know, sales is made up of units times price, variable costs, units times cost, and then fixed cost is fixed cost. Okay, it doesn't change relative to output. So now if we link this to CVP, CVP, cost, volume, profit. Cost, so we're focusing on total cost, but we know total cost is variable as well as fixed. Volume comes over here in sales and in variable costs. So this units over here is units sold. Let me just do that. So that, yeah, so that's units sold. This is also going to be units sold, but also remember there's two types of units that management accounting deals with. It deals with units sold. It also deals with units produced. Okay. And then we have profit. Now, costs, units, and price will ultimately have an impact on profit. So just be aware of that. So when you want to analyze a company from a management accounting point of view, you will think in terms of this formula over here and that formula over there. So just be aware of that. So now when we come to CVP, what are the key issues that we are trying so what are the key issues that CVP deals with? Okay, so under CVP, the key issues are the following. 1, break even. Actually not 1. 1, contribution margin. 2, break even. Okay, then they have other stuff like, I was going to say 3. There's many other stuff. 3, it could be margin of safety. Okay. Now let's have a look at contribution. I'm not going to deal with margin of safety. Okay, I'm going to deal with the first 2. And remember, there's many other stuff in CVP, but those 3 are the typical ones, and 1 and 2 comes in all the time. The chance of 1 and 2 coming in is 100%. I remember one of our lecturers told us that when I was still a student, like for the ITC exam, right, for the psycho exam, if you did not do a break even in your, if you never answered break even in your question, just know you have missed something. That's how important break even is. If you did not come across break even, then you know you have missed something in the exam, because break even basically always comes in. So you must understand break even is extremely, extremely important from a business perspective. Okay. Contribution margin, we all know that comes in like it's like normal. Okay, so that comes in all the time. So remember, break even is an important number. So what is contribution margin? So contribution margin equals sales minus variable costs. Okay, so you all know that. I just want to make something clear, because this is something that it's a subtle, something very small, but have a significant impact. And many, and through my tutoring, I've come across that many students get confused. Okay. What you must understand over here, that variable costs in the contribution margin calculation is total variable costs. Okay, so when you're doing the contribution margin calculation, it is total variable costs. What is total variable costs? Total variable costs is manufacturing variable costs as well as non-manufacturing variable costs. So manufacturing variable costs is direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. Non-manufacturing variable costs is your selling commission or something of that nature. So please be aware, when you're calculating contribution margin, it is total variable costs. Now, where does the confusion come in? The confusion comes in between contribution margin and the cost of a product. When you work out the cost of a product, the cost of a product only includes manufacturing costs. So a cost of a product only includes manufacturing costs. So when you're using the variable costing system, then the cost of a product would be direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. That's it. But when you're calculating contribution margin, we're not worried about the cost of a product. All we want to know is sales minus all variable costs. So therefore, this variable cost would be manufacturing variable costs as well as non-manufacturing variable costs. Please make sure you are crystal clear on that. You don't want to make that subtle mistake because it will cost you a lot. Okay, so please be aware. Then we have break even. So break even is a simple calculation, but it's you're going to see now we do it in a more complex manner. So break even is simply fixed cost, and this is total fixed cost. So not fixed cost per unit, it is total fixed cost, and it includes all fixed costs, manufacturing fixed costs as well as non-manufacturing fixed costs, but the total value, not the per unit value, okay, divided by contribution margin per unit. So very important, it is contribution margin per unit. So once again, you can see there's contribution margin, but very important, it must be per unit. This over here is a total cost. That over there is a per unit cost. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now this is break even in units, okay, in number of units. You can also get break even in value or break even in rands. Okay, I don't want to use the word rands because rands is only one type of currency, but basically break even in terms of a currency value. So this would be contribution, still fixed costs, but this would be contribution margin ratio. Okay, so what is contribution margin ratio? Let's actually put that in number 3. Let's make that number 4. And that make number 3. So contribution margin ratio. Spelling contribution margin ratio. So contribution margin ratio. So contribution margin ratio equals contribution margin divided by sales times 100. Okay, so contribution margin ratio is simply contribution margin divided by sales times 100. Okay, so contribution margin is going to give you the profit per unit. Contribution margin ratio is going to give you a percentage. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, so that is basically it when it comes to CVP. These are the key issues when it comes to CVP. Now, this calculation over here, break even, is going to give you like 10 to 15 marks in an exam. So 10 to 15 marks is a lot of marks, but what I can tell you, you can get 100% for it. If you really, if you keep your head up high, you can get 100% for that, that question. So 10 to 15 marks, there's a full 10 marks is a lot, okay? There's like a full 10%. So make sure you can do it because it's quite easy, quite simple. It's not a lot of steps involved, but it's a fairly logical way of the calculation. Okay, so remember, on a second year level MAC, this is a very easy calculation, 2 marks. But on a third year level and a CTA level, it is a 10-mark calculation because in second year management accounting, the break even is just for 1 year for one product, but on a third year and up, the break even is for multiple products. So we're probably going to have like 2 to 3 products where we have to work out a break even. So is there any questions at this point? If not, I'm going to switch over into the question now. Any questions, Michaela, Alvina, Sergio?
Nothing from my side for each, thank you.
No questions from me.
Okay, Sergio?
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
Oh,
okay.
good.
So let's just go on to, just tell me if you can see the question paper. Yes, you can. You should be able to see it.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So
Yes.
we do question 1. Okay, so we kind of read through the scenario already, but I'm going to go through it again very quickly. And we're going to answer this over here. So they say, ignoring the possibility of any limitation, assist Miss Reindeer with a calculation, okay, of the budgeted number of units for each product that Imvula must sell in order to break even for the 2018 financial year. Okay, so remember what I told you. When it comes to management accounting, there's always three things you want to identify when you must do a numbers calculation, when it involves numbers. Number one is whether you must use budgeted information or actual information. Okay, so here you can see they spoke about budgeted. Number two, you want to identify whether you're dealing with a financial year, whether you're dealing with a quarter, whether you're dealing with a month, or whether you're dealing with per product, whatever like that. Okay, so just be aware of that. So here we're dealing with the full year. Okay, so number one, budgeted versus actual. Number two, the period. Is it annually? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Is it daily? Is it whatever? Okay. Number three, the date. Okay. So here you can see, because it's annual, so it's the 2018 financial year. If it would have been monthly, they would have said May 2018, for example. Okay. So be aware of that. So number one, budget versus actual. Number two, the length. Okay. The duration. Annual, quarter, monthly. Number three, the actual date. Then that's not always applicable, but you have a look when it comes to number four as well. Are you looking, especially when they ask you for the cost of a product, do they wanted the cost of a product per unit? Do they want the cost of a product on a total level? Things like that. Okay, very important to pick those up. But with the first three, actual versus budget, the period and the date, that will tell you where you need to look within a scenario. Okay, so just be aware of that. So we're going to work out break even for to assist Ms. Reindeer for the budgeted. So just basically number one. So it's basically budgeted information for the financial year 2018. Done. We know where we need to look. Budgeted, full year, and the date is 2018. Okay, so we know we need to be under this thing over here. Take note, we read this already. There are three products: glossy, fashion, standard. The costing system, absorption costing system. Why is that important? When you see the costing system, what must you think? You must tell yourself that when you read absorption costing system, what do you tell yourself? The cost of a product is made up of direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overheads, fixed manufacturing overheads. If it was the variable costing system, it would have been only direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. So just remind yourself about that. Okay, now we have budgetary information. Okay, so they say the following 4 years of consecutive decline in the market share. Ms. Reindeer is concerned that the continuing decline in sales demand will have an impact of the company's ability to break even. The company's in-house market research division established that Imvula's customer base is increasingly becoming socially and environmentally conscious and are therefore voting with their feet in protest to Imvula's usage of rubber. The following extracts of the budget for the financial year ending 31 December 2018. Okay, so there we have the information. Okay, we're going to read through it. Okay, so we'll read through it now. We're only going to read number one, because that's the budgeted. You can see number two is actual. So we're not interested in actual right now. So they say the following are extracts from the budget for the financial year ending 31 December. There is selling price. There is gross profit per unit. When you see gross profit per unit, you must automatically know, when you see gross profit per unit, you must automatically know that we are dealing with an absorption costing system. Okay. Then we have number of manufactured and sales units. Then we have machine minutes per unit, and then we have rubber used per unit in terms of grams. They're telling you a pair of rain boots is equal to 1 unit because rain boots can only be sold as a pair of boots. That is very important when you're dealing with a MAC question to identify what is a unit. Very important. Okay, so because remember, a unit can be, for example, a 50 kilogram of cement. Like in this case, a unit is 1 pair of boots. Very important because they may give you information relating to 1 boot. But if you work out for 1 unit, then you need to double it because you have 2 boots in 1 unit. So very important to identify what constitutes one unit of a product. Okay, so they're telling you, they say the manufacturing and sales of the rain boot will occur evenly throughout the financial year. Variable selling cost per unit is 2% of the selling price. So this here is an example of a variable cost, but this is a variable non-manufacturing cost. Okay, so just be aware of that. So when you calculate contribution margin, we will include that. But when we calculate the cost of a product, we won't include that because that is not a manufacturing cost. Okay. The fixed manufacturing overheads are absorbed based on an annual budget. The fixed manufacturing overheads are absorbed based on annual budgeted machine hours. The related budgeted absorption rate was calculated at 40 Rand per machine hour. Okay, so that's very important. I'm going to, so they're giving us the answer already, okay? But I'm going to spend a bit of time in this question of how to get to that 40 Rand. When you read that 40 Rand per machine hour, you must be able to calculate that 40 Rand, okay? We have enough information to calculate it. So you just want to be able to run it through your head because it's very, very important that you understand, even if they don't give you the information to calculate that 40 Rand, you must at least know what information you would need in order to get that 40 Rand. Okay, so that's a critical number. This number here is basically, remember, the absorption costing method. What's the difference between absorption costing method and variable costing method? It is the allocation of fixed overheads. Under the variable costing system, fixed manufacturing overheads is expensed in the year it is incurred. Whereas under the absorption costing method, fixed manufacturing overheads is allocated to the cost of a product. So the absorption costing system has two approaches. The absorption costing system using the traditional costing method, the absorption costing system using activity-based costing method, the ABC method, okay? Now this one is the traditional costing method. So you must know how the formula regarding the traditional costing method. So I'll cover it just now as we go through the question, and then make sure you can play around with that formula, and you must always run that formula through your mind because you want to be able to, you want to be, how can I say, you want to know it like that. You must know traditional costing inside out, okay? Because they may not ask you to calculate it, but you must be able to manipulate the formula in order to get information and answers that would be missing. Okay, so it's very, very important. They're not always going to ask you for the traditional costing method in the way that we have done in second year and so forth, but rather they want you to know the traditional costing method in order to work out other unknown information. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, so then they say the fixed non-manufacturing costs were budgeted to be a total of 2.8 million for the financial year and fixed selling costs to be a total of 1 million Rand for the financial year. So as you can see, that is fixed non-manufacturing costs and then fixed selling costs. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let's answer 1.1, question 1. So question 1, we're only going to use that information. Otherwise I didn't, okay, so that's fine. So ignoring the possibility of the limitation, assist Ms. Reindeer with the calculation of the budgeted number of units for each product that Imvula must sell. So remember the one for each product to break even for the 2018 financial year. Okay, so let's have a look. So now I'm just, can you see Excel or Google Sheets? So I'm going to confirm that you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we need to work out break even. Okay, so break even units equal fixed costs divided by contribution contribution margin per unit. Now, this is contribution margin per unit. Okay, so that is correct in terms of the calculation. However, because we have more than one product, this formula is only correct if there's one product. But we have more than one product. We have 3 products. So the correct formula must be weighted contribution margin. Okay, so we will use weighted contribution margin when we are dealing with a multiple product scenario. Okay, so let's work it out. So we're going to need fixed cost. We're going to need weighted contribution margin. Okay, and this is going to give us break even. Break even units. Now remember, the question didn't ask us for break even units. The question asked us break even so they say budgeted number of units for each product. Okay, so they want to know, in order to break even, how many units of each product must we sell? Okay, so this answer we're going to get over here is going to give us the total number of units. But we will have to split this total number of units between the different products. So I can't remember what was the products now. What was the products? So we're going to split it between glossy, fashion, and standard. Glossy, fashion, and standard. So this is going to be glossy, fashion, and standard. Okay, there we go. Done. Question is set up. Now we're going to do the calculation. Okay, so working one. Let's do the fixed cost. Now fixed costs they gave us in point 1.6, I think. The last point I think is 1.6. They gave us fixed non-manufacturing costs. They gave us fixed selling costs, and then we're gonna have to calculate fixed manufacturing cost. Manufacturing cost. Okay, this is going to give us total fixed cost. Okay, so this is going to give us total fixed cost. Okay, so this was given, I think it was 2880123. Just double check that I'm taking the right numbers. And then it was 1 million. I know this one is right. Okay. Okay, so this here, given, you don't have to put the word given, just for our purposes. So when you look at it again, you know where I am getting the numbers from. Okay, now we have to work out fixed manufacturing costs. Okay, so under fixed manufacturing costs, they told us that the fixed manufacturing cost per machine hour is 40 Rand per machine hour. So we can use this information in order to get the number of the total fixed cost. We know the 40 Rand per machine hour is, we know the absorption rate or known as the fixed overhead rate. So the absorption rate, fixed overhead rate, same thing. Okay, so we know the fixed overhead rate or the absorption rate is 40 Rand per machine hour. They're telling us how many machine hours or minutes there are per per unit of each item. So, and here they're giving us a number of units, so we'll be able to work out the total costs. Okay, so let's have a look. Before I do that, I just want to divert slightly. Okay, so I want to just divert slightly to show you how traditional costing works. Okay, so remember, when we work with traditional costing method, the way we want to work out fixed overheads applied. Fixed overheads applied, that is how much fixed overheads we allocate to each product. Okay, so fixed overheads applied tells us how much fixed overheads we need to allocate to each product. Okay, so, and this is equal to, so fixed overheads applied equals, what does it equal now? Fixed overhead rate. Now, fixed overhead rate is the same thing as the absorption rate. This was given to us as 40 Rand, okay, multiplied by activity. Okay, so multiplied by activity. The word, I use the word activity. Activity refers to how overheads is allocated. So I just want to tell you, I'll just put it over here. So FOHA equals fixed overhead applied. Okay, this is what this is the amount that is allocated to the cost of a product. Okay, this is the amount of fixed manufacturing overheads that is allocated to the cost of a product. Okay, equals fixed overhead rate. Okay, also known as absorption rate. Okay, and then activity equal the basis of allocating overheads. Okay, examples, units produced, machine hours, labor hours, labor costs, etc. Okay, so however, whichever basis they use to allocate overheads, that is known as your activity. You want to identify which activity do they use to allocate overheads. So you remember in the traditional costing method, they use one allocation basis. So either machine hours, either labor costs, either units produced. So that's the difference between traditional and ABC. What do they do in ABC? They look at the various types of activities that derives the cost. Okay, so in ABC, we have multiple activities with different cost drivers. With traditional costing method, they just use one allocation basis. They care less about what actually drives the cost. Okay, so just be aware of that. Now, fixed overhead rate times activity. We know what is fixed overhead rate. It is 40 Rand. What is the activity? The activity is the number of machine hours. That's how we're going to calculate the total fixed manufacturing costs. Now remember, how do you get fixed overhead rate? Fixed overhead rate equals budgeted costs divided by budgeted, how do I spell this? Am I spelling right? Budgeted activity. Okay, so it's simply budgeted costs divided by budgeted activity. We have fixed overhead rate. We want the budgeted cost, which is the budgeted fixed costs. And we can determine, we don't exactly have we have the information to calculate budgeted activity. So rearranging the equation. So if you want to rearrange the equation in this scenario, I'm going to delete it again, but to rearrange the equation, we're simply going to say fixed overhead rate multiplied by budgeted activity will equal budgeted fixed costs. Okay, so that is what we want. We want this number. We simply rearrange that equation to get that number. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. When you want whenever you think additional costing, run this formula through your head. Run that formula through your head and tell yourself what are the variables. So for fixed overhead applied, this is the formula. So you must tell yourself the variables is that, the variables is that. To get this calculation, that's the formula, budgeted costs over budgeted activity. Remind yourself what drives budgeted costs, what drives budget activity. So you want to be so used to it that if they give you the information, that when they give you the information, automatically it jumps into your head. Okay, so but this comes with not only repetition, this comes with training your brain how to think. So that is the important aspect. So I have a big focus on training yourself how to think, so that no matter what they give you, you will be able to navigate yourself through the scenario. Okay, so just be aware of that. So that was just a side. So that was just, what did I just do now? So this was just a side to show you how we're going to get fixed manufacturing costs. Okay, so fixed manufacturing costs, I'm going to do working 2. So working 2, to get fixed manufacturing costs, we're going to say details. We're going to have, I think, what was it again? What is it? Glossy, fashion. What was the other one? Standard, and then total. Okay. So using that formula, we want fixed manufacturing costs. We know the fixed overhead rate. We know machine hours per unit. We know number of units. So just to go back, we want to get budgeted fixed costs. We were given fixed overhead rate, but now we need budgeted activity. We know the activity is machine hours, but we don't want machine hours per unit. We want total machine hours. And that is why over here, they gave us machine hours per unit. We don't want that. We want total machine hours. So to get total machine hours, you say machine hours per unit times number of units produced. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Please stop me if you need further clarification. So this here is going to be 40, 40, 40. What was it now? It was 30, 45, 15. 30, 45, 15. So remember that is machine minutes. We want it per hour. So with this 40 Rand is 40 Rand per hour, not 40 Rand per minute. So therefore we need to get it into an hours. So it was 30, 45, 15. It was 30 divided by 60. It is going to be, what is the other one? 45 divided by 60. And the other one was 50 divided by 60. Okay, so there we go. A number of units, cannot remember.
48,000.
Yeah, just tell me. 48.
24,000.
24.
And 72,000.
Okay, so there we go. Okay. So this is going to give us total fixed costs, not total fixed costs, total manufacturing costs. sorry, total fixed manufacturing costs. Okay, I'm only writing in bold so you can see. You don't have to write it in, I mean, well, in caps, so you can see, just to pay the attention. So that is fixed overhead rate multiplied by activity. Okay. Okay. So this is going to equal sum. Okay, so 2.4 million is the total fixed cost. Okay, so I say sum, there we go, 6280. So that traditional costing thing was very important. They indirectly tested you on traditional costing. Okay, they indirectly tested you on the traditional costing method. Okay, so just be aware of that. Without asking you to do traditional costing, they tested whether you understand the principles and the formula of the traditional costing method to work backwards to get to fixed manufacturing overheads. So that is why it's important. You can't memorize things. You need to understand things. The way you're going to understand things is by working through questions and reviewing what you are doing. Why you got something right, why you got something wrong, and how do you fix it. So that's why I always advocate just do 3 to 5 questions, but do it properly as opposed to doing 10 questions. Because if you do 10 questions and you're just running through it, you are hoping that in the exam something very similar comes in. But if it doesn't, then you kind of messed up. But if you do less than, if you do high quality and you can only get to 3 to 5, then you will be in a better position. Obviously, the person that can do 10 questions at a high quality is obviously going to be far better. But don't forego quality in order to get to quantity. But also, don't not just do one. That's not enough. So now we will go to, so now let's do, let's do this. Okay, now we need to do weighted contribution margin. Okay, now we need to calculate weighted contribution margin. So working 3. So weighted contribution margin. So we want contribution margin. Okay, so what is contribution margin? Sales minus less total. So remember, less total variable costs. Now, what's very important, you must have a look. How do the question provide you with information? Remember, total variable cost is variable manufacturing costs plus variable non-manufacturing costs, right? Now, variable cost is direct material. Sorry, variable manufacturing cost is direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. Now, if you look at the question, they never split it up. They just simply said gross profit. Okay, so they never split it up. They simply said gross profit. So all we need to get is the variable manufacturing costs. Okay, so we don't have to split it up because they gave us a total, so we can just get the total we want. But if they gave you direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead separately, then you will list them separately. And that is why don't just be fixated in the way you set up a question. You must know what you need, and you can use the same format, but the details over here may differ depending on how the question is presented. Okay, so just be aware of that. Then we're going to have variable non-manufacturing costs. And the variable non-manufacturing cost in this question is the variable selling costs. Okay, and this is what's going to give us our contribution margin per unit. This is contribution margin per unit. What just happened over here? Now the selling price is 180, 250, 140. 180. What did I just see now? 180, 250, 140. 250, 140. Okay. Now, variable manufacturing costs, we weren't given variable manufacturing costs. What were we given? We were given gross profit. Okay, so gross profit is 90, 125, and 70. 190, 125, and 70. So what we're going to do, working for working for, what is it now? What am I looking for? What am I looking for? Just tell me. Oh, so it is sales less GP, less gross profit. So sales minus GP will give me total manufacturing costs. How do I know that? Because remember, sales minus gross profit is the absorption costing method. So the absorption costing method gives me total manufacturing costs. Total manufacturing costs includes fixed manufacturing overheads, but we don't want total manufacturing costs. What do we want? We want variable manufacturing costs. So how do we get variable manufacturing costs? Is by removing, so total manufacturing cost minus fixed manufacturing costs will give me the variable manufacturing costs. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, this will give me variable manufacturing costs. Okay, so we know sales. Let's take this. What was this? This was 90,
125,
and 70. So therefore, total manufacturing costs equals that minus that. We don't want total manufacturing costs because total manufacturing costs includes fixed manufacturing overheads. How do we know that? Because we're using the absorption costing method, and another thing we're using, they gave us gross profit. Gross profit implies we are using the absorption costing method. Okay, so now included in this cost is fixed manufacturing overheads. So this cost is direct material, direct labor, variable manufacturing overheads, fixed manufacturing overheads. What do we want? We only want variable costs, which is only direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. So to get that, we have to remove fixed manufacturing overheads. Now, we have fixed manufacturing overheads, but what's very important, this here is sales per unit, that there is gross profit per unit, so that there is total manufacturing cost per unit. So to get to a variable manufacturing cost per unit, we need fixed costs per unit. Okay, what did they give us? They never gave us fixed costs per unit. They gave us fixed costs per machine hour. Okay, so very important, you must see that difference. They never gave us fixed costs per unit. They gave us fixed costs per machine hour. So therefore, I'm going to do a separate calculation. In an exam, you don't have to do all these calculations, but I just want to go through the different calculations so you can see my thinking process. Okay, so if I do it over here, working 5, we know So we can just take this over here. I can just do that. So here we have fixed manufacturing cost, manufacturing costs per unit. Okay, so that it is over there. So I'm going to say equal minus that. I want to remove it. So therefore, the variable manufacturing cost is the sum. Okay, so if I put in this over here, variable manufacturing cost equals that. That is, what did I just do here? That here is working for okay, this here is just sales times 2%. Okay, so I just want to make this negative, so just easier. This is going to be equal sales times 2%. That's what they told us. So the contribution margin per unit equals the sum of this. Okay. Now, we don't want the contribution margin per unit. We want the weighted contribution margin per unit. Okay. So we don't want the contribution margin per unit. We want the weighted contribution margin per unit. So the way we do that, we work out a sales mix. Okay, so the way we do that, we work out a sales mix. Okay, so we're going to say sales mix, and then we're going to say weighted contribution margin. Now to get the sales mix, okay, so to get the sales mix calc, we're just simply going to put in number of units. So the sales mix calc, so number of units, we had it somewhere. Yeah, so I'm just going to take this. Okay, just get the total, and you just work out a weighting for each of it. Okay, so the way we get it, okay, so it's simply 48,000 divided by the total. What just happened over here? 48,000 divided by the total. 24,000 divided by the total. And then 72,000 divided by the total. Okay, so this should just add up to 1. Cool. So now we can just bring in the sales mix over here. Now we bring in the weighting. The way we get the weighting is simply the contribution margin times the sales mix. Contribution margin times the sales mix. Okay. So the way we get the weighting is contribution margin times the sales mix. But we need the weighted sum. So we just basically add up. Okay, so the weighted contribution margin is that number over there. Well, I'm assuming my answers are right. Looks a bit odd, but okay. Okay, so there's the answer. The number looks a little bit odd, but we'll just stick with it. Okay, so the weighted contribution is working 3, and it is, what is this number? F31. So this here is working 3. And it is equal to F31, which is the 99 Rand. Okay, so it is simply fixed costs divided by weighted contribution margin. So therefore the number of units is that. We don't round off at this point in time. We first do the split. Okay, so we just go fetch the sales mix. The sales mix is 33. Fashion is 7, whatever that is, and that is that. Okay. So all we do, should have done something different. Do this, Control X. Okay. So what we're going to do, the sales mix is simply take the break even, the total break even units multiplied by the sales mix. Total break even, yep, Google is doing it for me already. Okay, and then, yeah, okay, and then equal, Google's doing it for me already, so there we go. So you can see if I work out the total, it should add up. Okay, so if I just say the total, it should add up. Okay, so there we go. I just do a basic check. Okay, so you can see it's adding up. If I just say that minus that, it gives me 0. So we're happy with that. Okay, but obviously now you can't have 21.310.55 of a boot. So therefore the final answer is 21.131. You can't have 10.565.28. You can't have 0.28 of a boot. So therefore that would be 10.566, not 565. Because if it's 565, it is less than that. You're not going to break even. So you must always, must think about that. Hey? You don't do normal rounding. And if you use Excel as rounding, Excel is going to make it 565. Can't be 565. It has to be 566 because it's 0.28. It's more than 565. But you can't have 0.28 of a boot. So therefore you do the full boot. Similarly over here, it's going to be 31,696. Okay, you can't do 0.83 of a boot. You have to be a full boot. So there we go. That's the final answer. Whatever the answer was. What was the question? The question said. What did the question say now? Okay, so the number of boots per unit in order to break even. Okay, so we will go. So this here is break even units per product. Okay, so there we go. So that is the answer. Okay, so that's your 12 marks. You can see I have a lot of workings. You don't have to have all these workings. I generally have the different types of workings. Firstly, in the real world, I do this amount of workings, even in an exam. But also, more importantly, it's because most of you will most likely go back to the calculations and so forth. So then it's easier for you to follow. But obviously, you see how you like to set it out, your workings, how many workings you want. Just take note, UNISA is more strict. UNISA don't mark this. UNISA don't mark this. Okay, UNISA marks this. UNISA marks your workings. So just be aware of that. If you don't show, if you have too little workings, you're going to lose a lot of marks. Not everything need a working, but where there's lots of where it's quite complex, you must show a working, because they're going to think you copied and they're going to give you 0. Okay, so they don't mark final answer, they mark your workings. Okay. Is there any questions from your side on this? Michaela, Alvina, Sergio?
Okay.
No,
No
thank you.
questions.
So I hope you found it useful. This is a standard of doing what is this now? Contribution margin. I mean break even. But obviously, how you get to the other numbers will obviously differ in different questions. But the thought process, the ultimate goal, is still the same. How you need to get to certain numbers will be different, but the ultimate endpoint is still the same. So just make sure you train yourself to develop a way of thinking so you know what you're trying to achieve. So once you know what you are trying to achieve, you can identify what is given, you can identify what is not given. Whatever it is not given, you need to find out how can you calculate it. Okay, so just follow that. Don't try to memorize. If you're going to memorize, then you're going to have to work through every possible example that there is out there. So that's impossible. So just make sure you work through, as you practice, you develop the thinking process. Don't underestimate developing your thinking process. Okay, so that's all from my side. I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to send you, we need to do, I'm going to send the recording of yesterday, and I want you to do a transfer pricing and a performance management question. And then you must mark yourself, or try to, if there's a solution, try to mark yourself and see where you're struggling. Wherever you're struggling, then you set up a one-to-one session with me, like a 20-minute, 50-minute one-to-one session, and we can go through the issues that you are struggling with. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.